Hey everyone, good evening, good night, good night. Natasha Pennycook here. Keep Six is here. Happy New Year. I'm so excited to be here, to be back, to be locked on with you all tonight. We're having a great conversation today. Hope everyone can hear me. You can hear me, you can see me. Just changed my setup a little bit, so just making sure that things are good. So we are having a really good conversation today with Jacqueline Lamarre from ForGiving ForRestoring Canada. It's going to be a great conversation. Rachel is here. Thank you, Rachel. Hey, everybody, come on in. Come on in. Come on in. It's going to be a great conversation. Jackie, I see that you're here. Welcome. Request to join. I know that the platform looks a little bit different. So request, and yeah, it's going to be a really, really good conversation. Hey everyone. Oh, Jackie, there you are. Hey. All
Can you hear me
right.
now?
I can hear you. I can see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our Keep Six platform.
Thank
So we're going to
you.
have a good, you're welcome, you're welcome. So we're going to have a good conversation tonight. I know we're going to be talking a lot about forgiveness and restoration and mediation and all of that. So I'm very, very looking forward to jumping on this conversation. I know there's a lot of people coming in. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Jason. Yeah, hey, everyone, tell a friend to tell a friend that we are on, that we are locked on right here on Keep Six. So Jackie, welcome tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are most welcome, most welcome. So I'm encouraging everyone, ask questions as we go on. We want to make this a really fun, lively, interactive conversation. So Jackie, you know what? I'm going to leave it to you. Tell us who you are, what brings you here, and what are we going to talk about tonight?
That's such a big question. Who am
I
I? My
know.
goodness. I mean, I'm still working on that, still trying to figure that out. But
We all are. We all are.
yeah, in a nutshell, I guess I start by saying that I was born and raised in Montreal. I kind of did my studies in sciences, thought I was going to be a pediatrician, and none of that happened. But I'm very happy where I am at right now. It's been a long journey to get here. One of the things that has always driven me is my passion to help others. And I really love to help people communicate with each other better,
Yeah.
help people better relationships and understand each other. And so, in trying to figure all that out, I did studies in public relations, thinking that that would get me closer to that goal. Didn't quite work out, but one thing led to another, and I ended up discovering mediation and alternative dispute resolution. And that brought me to Ottawa, which is where I'm at right now, to
Mm-hmm.
continue my studies and just get on the path to becoming a practitioner in that field. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, I guess.
Nice. So I know that, for those of you who are just joining, we are here on Keep Six. We're speaking with Jacqueline, who is here representing Forgiving for Restoring Canada, which is a program that originally started in Latin America and made its way to Canada. So Jackie's here going to be talking to us all about this program. So, yeah, so let's jump off from there. Tell us exactly what Forgiving for Restoring Canada is.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's a program that originally started in Colombia, actually.
Okay.
And the founder is Leonel Narvez, who is actually a priest. And he worked and lived with the FARC, which was one of the main guerrilla groups for Colombia's civil war. And
Mm,
he was part of their first peace process that was unfortunately not successful. And following that, he was asking himself questions about why, this negotiation and mediation and all of these processes with all of these, high officials involved, why did it fail? What was missing? And he started doing research into forgiveness and felt that that was really what the missing piece was. And
mm,
through his research, he created this program with assistance from various universities. And it really is something that he used or introduced as a tool for communities in Colombia initially who were dealing with the return of, child soldiers or the FARC, or, just realizing that their communities had been devastated by years of violence, and they needed a way to move forward. They needed a way to be able to live with each other and continue to grow and thrive. And so that's kind of the history behind that. So it's a 12-step program or a 12-module program. 6 of the modules are on forgiveness and 6 are on restoration. And
Okay.
they did it in little workshops and wherever they could find. It's, very train the trainer, like whoever's interested, they would learn and then they would deliver it in their communities. And it spread from there to other countries, and about 2 years ago here to Canada. So.
Okay. So tell us a little bit, what is forgiveness? Because when we all talk about, we've all spoken about forgiveness and things like that. So give us a little bit of what forgiveness is, and then also give us a little bit of what restoration is, so we have
Mhm.
an idea of the two.
Yeah. So I guess what we like to do is start with what forgiveness is not, because
Okay.
that often helps people kind of let go of some of the misconceptions that they have. So if you see me glancing down, I do have notes that I'm referring to, so I'm just going to let
That's okay.
people know. But so forgiveness is not forgetting, condoning, excusing, or having weak morals or reconciling. So even right there, that's a huge difference, that you can forgive and not restore a relationship. Just because you forgive doesn't mean that you are going to continue being in the same state or condition that you were in before. So that other part that's really big is that it's not condoning. So because you forgive someone doesn't exclude you from being able to seek justice. It doesn't exclude you from being able to want something that was wrong made right. Um,
Mm.
so those are things that we really focus on, that it's not something that you do out of pity. It's not something you pay lip service to, and something that was very transformative for me. It's not a one-time thing. So I could
Mm-hmm.
make a
Right.
decision, which is what forgiveness is, a decision to forgive someone today and still have feelings that I need to work through tomorrow, and I have to make the decision again. So it's a continual process. It is a choice. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not based on feelings. You're not always going to feel like it. You're not always going to feel like you forgave. But if you make that choice and continue to take action based on that
Mm-hmm.
choice, that's where you're going to kind of end up getting to. And so, knowing what
Okay.
it's not, um, I can give a really clear example, something that stood out to me after having a discussion with Lionel about forgiveness.
Yeah.
And he described it as kind of individual justice. I would say it's more personal liberation, because it's
Okay.
really this notion that you're doing it for yourself and you're
Mm-hmm.
giving yourself what no external person or system can give you, which is freedom from the pain and the hurt of a past wrong that's occurred. So,
Okay. Okay. And we have some comments here that I'm just going to put in right now. So we have someone is saying, to me, forgiveness is letting go, allowing God, the universe to take the wheel. Right?
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that letting go piece. And someone else says, life is your best teacher says, forgiveness is so important in healing and developing your inner peace.
It is, definitely.
Yeah.
And that letting go, I appreciate that there's an image that comes to mind. If someone offends you, it's like them putting hot coals in your hand. They made that choice, they imposed something on you. But
Mm-hmm.
once you're holding them, you can decide to let them go or not after the fact. Like, you don't continue walking around with those. And so
Yeah.
forgiveness is that act of letting them go.
Kind of like dropping it and letting it go,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And then Tima 7777 says again, removing blocked or stagnant energy or chi, right? Like letting go
Mhm.
of that, removing the energy, removing the block, removing the stagnant energy just sits there.
Yeah, and the ties, because unforgiveness or not forgiving keeps you
Mhm.
tied or linked to the person, to the event. Every time you walk by a certain place, you're going to remember what happened or what they did. But
Mhm.
forgiveness gives you the opportunity to say, I'm not going to be tied to that anymore. I'm not going to be defined by that anymore. And I'm going
Right.
to make that choice to move forward and reclaim my life and reappropriate the decisions and who I get to be and what I choose to do. So,
Right. I like that. I like that idea of you making that choice to reclaim your life, your energy, let go of the blocks and the things that are keeping you hostage.
yes, very much
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Another quick analogy is that when you don't
Mhm.
forgive, it's like drinking poison and expecting it to kill the other person. It's not gonna work, right? And
Right.
so, yeah.
Yeah. So then tell us what restoration is.
So restoration comes after forgiveness. So you cannot have restoration without forgiveness. That's important.
Okay.
But that's when there's a decision that's been made that the relationship is important, that you do
Mhm.
want to continue, and both people get involved. So for forgiveness, it's just you. The other
Okay.
person doesn't necessarily even know that you forgave. There doesn't have to be
Mhm.
an initiating factor. They don't
Mhm.
have to ask for it. I mean,
Mhm.
you make that choice for yourself. And there are many cases when the person has passed or whatnot, and it's not even possible for you to wait on them to say they're sorry to make that choice. So
Right. Yeah.
forgiveness is something you do as an individual. When you
Mhm.
go to restoration, both people now have to be involved, and there is going to
Okay.
be an acknowledgement on the part of the offending party, for lack of a better expression, that they did something wrong or that they hurt you, and then both together are going to work together to kind of recreate that story and decide
Mhm.
what you need to move forward. You set
Right.
boundaries, which is really important, and
That's super important.
you redefine what your relationship is going to look like, right? So restoration
Right.
is really that piece that involves both when a choice is made that the relationship is worth or needs to continue.
Okay, okay. And Jason here is saying, I like the poison analogy, Jackie. And I think I do too. I like it a lot because it's so fitting, right? It's the
Mhm.
idea that yes, okay, I'm going to hold on to it. I'm going to make that person pay by me holding on to it. But it's really I'm then poisoning myself as I
Exactly.
hold on to all of the hurt, all of the pain, all of the sadness, all of the anger, all of the
Mhm.
upset that comes along with it. And then I like how you broke down that restoration because it's really involves the two people. So forgiveness for all of you out there listening and for those of you who are just joining, we're talking about forgiveness tonight. And Jackie has done a really great job of breaking down how forgiveness is the something that you do for yourself and that the restoration piece is something that happens between the two people who are involved. So there's like the acknowledgement of the hurt, right? One party or both parties acknowledging the hurt that was done, the mistakes that were made, the areas that need attention to be to restore the relationship, or figuring out that maybe the relationship is ending and still trying to find like that closure piece.
Exactly. Or that the relationship has to change. So there
Yeah,
could be a
yeah.
restoration and you realize that we can't continue being what we were to each other, but we make a
Right.
decision about what it is that we will be moving forward, right? So,
Right. Yes, that's a great point. Tima is saying, "Hello, everyone. My name is Fatima. I have very much so been working on forgiveness. So this talk is wonderful. Thank you, Fatima, for joining. And any questions that you have, Fatima, or everyone on, please put your questions in. Continue with your comments. We're here. We're having this conversation on forgiving and restoration. So, Jackie, tell us how you became involved. You gave us a little bit about your background. I didn't really go into your bio. We kind of just got right into the conversation tonight.
yes, it's
But
fine.
but how but how and why did you decide to particularly become involved with Forgiving for Restoring Canada?
So, as part of the training that I was doing to become a mediator with
Okay.
CICR, which is the Canadian Institute for Conflict Resolution, a lot of acronyms in
Okay.
my world right now, but that's okay.
Mhm.
One of the instructors is one of the founding members of Forgiving for Restoring Canada, and she mentioned to us that the first workshop was going to be offered, and who would like to, take part. So I was curious, and the why I was curious because I
Okay.
grew up in the church. I am a Christian, a woman of faith, and forgiveness is the crux of what we believe. but it's not often explained or explored other than it's something you have to do. You got it,
Right.
so you give it, and that's it. And so
Mm.
this notion of being somewhere where the concept of forgiveness would be broken down step by
Mhm.
step so that
Mhm.
you can understand what it's supposed to look like, how it applies, that you could talk openly about the struggles that you have in achieving it, because it's not always acceptable to say that you don't want to forgive or you're struggling to forgive or you thought you forgave, but a week later you're not too sure anymore. So being in a space where it was okay to kind of explore, the struggles of forgiveness, what it means, and just understand it differently, that's what really appealed to me. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a really great point, and I think that a lot of us, a lot of people who have been raised, especially in the church or from a faith-based household, have been told certain things, especially where forgiveness is concerned, right? It's this idea that no, you have to forgive everybody, forgive everybody, forgive everybody, but no one really talks about the process of how to do it. It's just this thing that's like expected to happen, expected to do. And I think a lot of times, what happens or what does not get done is the actual forgiveness as you're speaking of it. It's just
Mhm.
this idea that, okay, you have to do this, but there's like no acknowledgement of the hurt. There's no validation of the feelings
Mhm.
there, which for me, for all those know that I speak a lot about mental health and the situations and the experience that impact our mental health. And I think that when we speak about that forgiveness piece, not getting the forgiveness and not fully um, understanding forgiveness or who it's for does have a big impact on our mental
Mhm.
health.
Mhm. And I think too that it creates this resistance, right? So if you
Mm-hmm.
don't understand it and you're just being told that you need to do it, you're like, well, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to and I don't see the point,
Right.
right? And so
Right.
there's no recognition that it really is something that's good for you. You're not doing it for the other person. You're
Mm-hmm.
doing it so that you can be free and so that you can be whole. And
Mm-hmm.
I think because people think that it's, something that's either meant for the other or something you do to be pious, or sometimes they think it's out of their reach, that it's only a certain kind of person who reaches a level where they can forgive. They don't
Mm.
engage in it as a practice, as something that you start doing, that you get better at, that sometimes is
Mm-hmm.
hard, sometimes it's easy. When I was going through the workshop, I realized that I had three different forgiveness scenarios in my mind that I was working through. One
Okay.
was very mundane. One
Mm-hmm.
was forgiving myself, which is, I
Mm-hmm.
think, still one of the hardest things to do. And the other was forgiving someone else for something that was really major and that impacted me for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But, at different levels, at different times, you could be working through different ways or different types of forgiveness, and that's okay too. And some might take a little bit longer, and others might be quicker, but
Mm-hmm.
it's recognizing that it's not just you should do this. It's good for you, and creating an environment people then say, I actually want to do this. So.
Right. Okay. Okay. So let's break down the program a little bit. So I know that you mentioned there were 12 modules, kind of like a 12-step, a 12 module program. What do the modules, excuse me, consist of?
So the forgiveness ones, the first one is
Yeah.
even just making that choice. So you're introduced
Okay.
to the concept
Mm-hmm.
and you're given space and opportunity to even think if it's something that you want to do, right?
Okay.
So then the next one is you're kind of moving from darkness to light, it's called, and it's your forgiveness evolves and you're starting to move towards recognizing that you're going to be having a different understanding of your past, right?
Okay.
Then the third step is when you actually decide to forgive, right? So the first two modules are just preparatory, and you
Yeah.
might still be toying with the idea of whether you're going to make that choice. Uh,
Yeah.
and
It's that place where it's like, okay, going from denial to
exactly,
acceptance. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So then once you've forgiven in the third or made that choice, the fourth module is about I see with new eyes. And that means you're starting to
Mm.
look at the offense differently and you're
Okay.
starting opening yourself to the realization that you can't change your past, but you can change the way you relate to it and the
Okay.
impact you allow it to have in your future, right?
Right. Right.
The fifth module is I understand my offender. And if I say that,
Mm.
people might automatically have a recoil reaction
Of
because,
course. It's like, what do
you
you mean to
haven't,
understand
yeah,
my offender?
right? But
Yeah.
one of the powerful things about that module is the recognition that to someone else you are an offender, right? We're all
Mm.
in this together. We've all been offended, but we've also all offended. And so
Right. True.
being able to level the playing field a little bit and recognize
Mm.
that again, it's not just one group of people who do these things that hurt people. I'm included
Yeah.
in that too, and
Right.
understanding the contributing factors that may have led to the offense. Again, that
Mm.
doesn't mean that it was okay, but the
Mm-hmm.
more you understand, the more you can digest it and make decisions and choices around how you interact with this person or how um, you choose to let it go, right? So,
Right. Right. Um, I think you mentioned something really, really good there. Um, oh gosh, I was just scrolling through to see what people were writing. Yeah, so you mentioned something really good. It's not that you're condoning, right?
mhm,
It's not that you get to a space and say, okay, I want to forgive. It's not that you're condoning what was done. It's so much that you're recognizing, okay, what's going on here? How could I forgive myself from it? How can I move forward, essentially?
mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
that's something that we repeat many times throughout the program, that forgiving doesn't mean excusing, and forgiving doesn't mean
Yes.
that you're saying that what the person did is okay. It
Right.
really
Right.
is about getting in that headspace for yourself where you can acknowledge that this happened and you cannot
Mm-hmm.
change the fact that that happened. So what are
Right.
you going to do? Are you going to stay stuck? Are you going to keep holding on to those hot coals
Mm-hmm.
and allow yourself to be burned? Are you going to keep drinking that poison? Or are you going
Right.
to say, you know what, I'm going to set that aside,
Mm.
with effort, with work, and change, because you're
Right.
the one who's changing through this process, right? The other person, again, in forgiveness may not be involved, may not even know sometimes that they offended you,
Mm-hmm.
or care or whatnot. So are you still going to stay stuck because of what someone else who, shouldn't have that much power over you did, right? So
Right.
that's really
Right.
important, that it's not condoning, and you could
Mm-hmm.
still, one thing that I appreciate is once you've forgiven, you can still go ahead and say that, okay, I was wronged in this way and I'm going to file a complaint or I'm going to go to court.
Mm-hmm.
And in thinking about it, I've heard people say that their anger motivates them to seek justice. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, they're both fueling, like forgiveness could open a space that you feel
Yep.
motivated, anger does too. But I
Mm-hmm.
compare being motivated by anger like driving a diesel car versus forgiveness is an electric car, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're getting fueled, but it costs you a lot more. There's effects on the environment. There's
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's
Has
happening
an
in the car you
emotional
gotta check.
effect.
Yeah, there's, gunk and stuff that's building up in you. It's
Yeah.
impacting people around you.
Mm.
And so,
Uh,
yes, you're going to get somewhere, but at what cost?
right.
Versus if
Right.
you seek justice after having forgiven, you're in a
Mm-hmm.
headspace where you're not about retaliation, you're not about
Mm-hmm.
revenge, you're really
Mm-hmm.
about getting what is just and making
Right.
things right. And you're less likely to have those negative effects that anger and all of those other emotions can bring about in your life and to the people around you. So
Right. Right. Someone here is saying it's freedom.
it is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Rachel here is saying you forgive yourself. There's something. It's a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to share. This is great. Thank you, everyone, for sharing and putting your input tonight. This is amazing. Someone is saying, Tanya is saying, is there such a thing as restoration with self? That's a great question.
That really is. And I would say yes, in the sense that you have to recognize that
Mhm.
I made a mistake, I messed up. And again, setting those boundaries and recognizing your humanness is something I like to say, and showing yourself grace and reconciling with the fact that, what I did then and how I was behaving then, and my 20-year-old self, whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
didn't know better or I couldn't do better based on circumstances. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of restore and recognize that I am where I am now and I could move forward differently, right? So
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Um, Someone else is saying, I think moving from darkness to light is imperative, for we are, what is it? For we are bought about maybe denying the realities, the hurt, the pain, etc.
yeah.
Right?
So what I
Yeah.
take away from that is that notion that when you shed light on something,
Mhm.
you're going to expose mess, you're going to expose things that are not pretty, but that need to be cleaned up and dealt with
Yeah.
if you're really going to be in a healthy
Yes.
space, right? So the
Yep.
darkness to light means that you're coming to that awakening or acknowledgement and then able to do something about it, right?
Yes, yes. And then also recognizing others have their own traumas, their own battles, right? Their own stuff. And there's
Mhm.
room for change and growth for new energy. Right. Yeah. Someone saying, Rachel saying, you forgive yourself, definitely empathy, understanding, autocorrect. Don't worry, I see you, I see you. Someone is saying, explain for me your perspective of forgiveness. And I think that's Eddie. I think Eddie just came in. So I know that we had spoken a little bit, Eddie, about the forgiveness piece earlier in our conversation.
Yeah, but I could just reiterate that it's a
Mm-hmm.
process and it's a choice. I think those are two
Mm-hmm.
biggest things that you make that choice and then you walk in that choice, you walk in that decision, and eventually becomes a way of life, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's not a one-time thing and it's not a feeling. I can't stress enough that you're not always going to feel like you forgave the person. But if you say that I'm making this decision and then align your behaviors to that decision that you've made, there are going to be easy days and there are going to be hard days, but you keep going in that direction, right? So
Right, right. Okay. Okay. Nice. And I know, Jackie, so you were at number four of the
Number
12?
5 was I understand my offender, that biggie that a lot
Yes.
of people
Yep.
have. And then number 6 is I break the chains and cleanse the pain. And that's really
Okay.
when your narrative around the offense starts to change. Because now
Okay.
you're bringing in the understanding that you gained from the previous module, and you're able to see the contributing factors, even your contributions to the offense differently. And that makes it
Okay.
a lot easier than to open yourself up for the next phase, which is when the modules in restoration will begin, right?
Right, right. Okay, okay. So that's interesting. So there's 12 modules. So the first six is really focused on the forgiveness. And once
Mm-hmm.
you move through the forgiveness, then you can get to that point where you're like kind of sitting on the fence between forgiveness and restoration, then moving forward into restoration. All right,
Exactly.
understood. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So one important thing is when you're on that fence, as you said, we
Yeah.
definitely are looking at things like safety and
Mhm.
realistically, is this
Yes.
a
Yep.
relationship that needs to be restored, right? And I
Right.
was having
Yeah.
a conversation the other day, and the person said they had a tumultuous relationship with someone who hurt them many times in the past, and they made that choice to kind of cut ties and not engage. Like, so they're still civil, they'll still say hello, they'll still check in, but they're
Mhm.
not gonna go over to their house, although none of us are doing that now, but not do
Right.
the things that they used to do. And they said
Okay.
that this person keeps asking them if they've forgiven. You said you forgave me, and yet, right? It's like, well, yeah, I
Mm.
forgave you, but I also then made the choice not to restore the relationship, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, that is where that line is not going to always be understood by others or even the
Mhm.
person who you're kind of in that relationship with. They might not understand. But it's important that when you're making that decision, you're really thinking about what your needs, what the boundaries are going to be,
Yes.
if it's safe to get back in this relationship, and not guilt yourself
Hmm.
into thinking that, well, I forgave, so I have to go back, right? And
Right.
so that's really important. And so
Yes.
then once we make that transition, number 7 is exactly kind of what I'm talking about, is we make care a priority. So you're really
Right.
making sure that it's being done in a way that's thoughtful and caring to yourself and to the other
Yeah.
person as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And when you say care a priority, whose care a priority?
So it's always from the perspective first of yourself, in the sense that it's your dignity and, making sure that going back or re-engaging this relationship is not going to diminish you or cause you greater harm, or again be at great cost to you. But
Mm-hmm.
also, in working through this, you do care about the other person in some way or another, in the sense that they're a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the discussions we have is around dignity, and the
Mm-hmm.
fact that all human beings are worthy of dignity because they are human, right? It doesn't
Right.
matter
Like human
their failures,
respect.
exactly, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
at some level, you are caring about them too, if you know that this relationship is not going to be healthy, is going to end up in the same place that it was in now. And so,
Mm-hmm.
by making that decision that, I'm going to walk away, they might not understand it and they might
Right.
not perceive it as care, but it is
Right.
still being caring, because you're being honest about where this is not going to work, right?
Right. Yes.
And
Yes.
so care all around as a priority, but you work through it first through your own lens so that you can understand it, and then apply it to the other as well.
Right, right. Someone here is saying transparency between the parties,
Mhm.
to be able to understand, I guess, the care for self, but also care for someone else. It just from the perspective of that person being a person and being human and deserving of respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something I could throw in here that I've heard recently and that resonated with me a lot is Brene Brown said that clear is kind and unclear is unkind. And
Mm,
so even in that moment when you're kind of deciding whether or not you want to move forward and this relationship needs to be restored, being
mhm,
clear about, what really is important to you, or what really went wrong, or what you're really going to need, and
mhm.
what the boundaries are going to look like. That's kindness to yourself and to the other, right? Because if you
Right.
decide you're not going to be truthful or hide something or whatnot, and
Mhm,
things go awry, you're both
mhm.
suffering again, right? So,
Right, right. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. So that's seven,
7, yeah.
8. Yeah.
So 8 is we set guiding principles. So again, that whole notion of boundaries and what it
Yeah.
is that this new relationship is going to look like.
Mhm.
9 is we build truth. So this is when you're
Mhm.
starting to uh, re reimagine the story, not just from your perspective, but now the other person is involved. And it's a complete picture of what happened and
Mhm.
what we want our story to be moving forward. So, what is
Mm.
our new narrative together going to be? Um,
Okay. So I have a
um,
question about that one because as you're building a new narrative, and I can imagine from a personal perspective as well, a professional perspective, that
mhm,
that being so difficult to get to that place of creating a narrative, a story about what happened,
mhm.
right? Why is that important also?
Because it's kind of filling in the blanks. Because very often when we're in that state of being hurt and
Mhm.
struggling to let go, we don't have a full picture or a full view of everything that was going on. We have our own
Mhm.
view and our
Mhm.
own preconceived notions or misconceptions, whatever that might be. And
Right.
we keep feeding them and we keep getting
Mhm.
stuck. And we don't know that there was another truth, something else that is really
Mhm.
valuable. And sometimes that information completely changes our perspective. It could, free us from something. There's a show that I love to watch. It's called, it's on TLC, and it's about families or people who were given away as children, adopted at birth or whatnot, and they
Mhm.
go on a search to find their birth parents.
Mhm.
And
Right.
a lot of times these people are struggling with this idea that this
Mhm.
person didn't want me, that they gave me away for this reason, and
Mhm.
I'm no good, and all of this because
Right.
of the story that they built, right? And
Right.
then they meet this other parent and they realize, well, no, I did want you, but I was 14. My mother said that if I kept you, I couldn't live in the house and that I had no way to support you,
Right.
and they
Right.
kind of break under the reality that their story, their
Right. The
narrative was not
narrative.
true.
Yes.
And
Right.
now
Right.
this truth comes in and changes not just how they view the other person, but themselves, right? Suddenly they're like,
Themselves.
well,
Yep.
I am worth loving. She did want me, or this was the circumstance. And, sometimes they find out hard truths. There was one episode where the person found out that they were the result of a rape, right? And so
Right. Yeah.
that's a hard truth, but it still is something that's important if you have the whole picture to then be able to let go and move forward in your life, right? So
Right. Yeah, that's so powerful. So someone here is also asking what the topic is. So welcome everybody for those of you just joining. We are here speaking with Jacqueline from Forgiving for Restoring Canada, and we're talking all things forgiveness and restoration tonight.
yes.
Someone mentioned too, right, it's so important to win the war in the mind first than the
Mhm.
physical world. And I think that's a really important point because exactly as you were saying, Jackie, that that narrative. So kind of winning the war on what the actual is, so you can understand the narrative you've been playing for yourself over and over
Mhm.
and over.
Mhm.
So then you can see your physical world for exactly what it is versus the picture that
Exactly.
we've been making up for ourselves. Right?
Mhm.
Someone else
Yeah.
is saying, "Clear is kind," eye-opening phrase.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes we withhold for the other's feelings, a lesson that I'm learning not to do.
Mhm.
Um, Someone's asking also, are you going to be posting these steps on your page? So I know for those of you who are just joining, wondering about the steps, because these steps are really important. These are the modules for the program, right? There is a program Forgiving for Restoring Canada. They have, I know that you had sent me,
Their
Jackie, an
workshop.
Eventbrite. There's a workshop that's
Yeah.
going on. Also, we at Keep Six, we're going to be partnering with Forgiving for Restoring Canada for an upcoming program that Keep Six is working on. So for those of you who are interested, it may be a great opportunity for you to get on board, to go through this program. We're probably going to have Jackie as one of the facilitators as well as one of her colleagues. So this may be a great opportunity for those of you here who are really interested in learning more and going through their own forgiveness and restoration process. It may be a
Mhm.
good opportunity for you to get on the program that Keep Six is going to be rolling out very, very soon. We're going to be
Yeah.
rolling out in about, I want to say, Rachel, what is it? About a month's time, 5 weeks time, something like that. So, or maybe less than, because we're already mid January.
Oh, don't say that. My
So
goodness.
I
Yeah.
know we're already mid. I'm still thinking we're like fresh off of New Year's, or we're already mid January. So
Yeah,
probably in
we're
about 4 weeks, 3 4 weeks, we have a program with Keep Six rolling out.
Yeah, and definitely people can reach out to me as well because the workshops are limited in size in order to make sure that everyone has the best experience possible.
Mhm.
So they can reach out to me, and I will be creating a wait list in order to reach out to folks once we kind of get the ball rolling, and if they can't do it in one time period and another time frame, but to be able to know who's interested and reach out
Yes.
when we can run another one. So.
Yes, sounds good. Yeah, Rachel is saying less than February launch, so that's like 2 weeks. Keep Six is rolling out a really great program, Gangster Tuition, and we're going to have for FFC as well as another program, Trap. So yeah, if you're interested, definitely reach out to Keep Six. Rachel's coordinating. You could also reach out to Jackie, who's here speaking to us today about all things forgiving and restoring.
Hmm. Yes,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we were at step 8.
We did 9, which was the
We
truth,
did 9. The
reveal truth.
truth. Okay.
And
Okay.
so 10 is about promoting justice, which is, again,
Okay.
something I mentioned many times that forgiving does not exclude or mean that you don't seek justice. So that would be,
Right.
the stage when we talk about what that could look like and,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you take the steps that you need in order to rectify the situation when it's possible to do so, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the number 11 is that you kind of create an agreement now. So now that you've gone through all these steps, you've recreated your truth, and you've had the justice piece, so that whatever is missing needs to be corrected. Now you can make your agreement and for what it'll look like when you move forward. And the
Is that
12,
agreement with yourself? Agreement with yourself? Agreement with whomever?
yeah, with all of the above. So you always have to do the work in yourself and in your mind
Yeah.
first, and be honest with yourself throughout. You know, we've had people go through the workshop and realize that they just weren't ready, that that was too much for them, and that they couldn't forgive yet. We always encourage them to continue and just gain the knowledge so that when you are ready, when the time does come, you will have it. But so that means that people are at different levels. So it does require you to be checking in with yourself, to be honest with yourself, and to make agreement with yourself, as you said, that I'm going to respect this as much as I want the other person to respect it, right? And then the 12th step is just to celebrate. Like it says, celebrate memory, but it's to really celebrate that you've been through this journey, that now you have a restored relationship that both people are on board with, and celebrate that you made it that far and that you did that. It's a huge accomplishment, right? So.
Right. Yeah, I could definitely imagine it's a huge accomplishment. And it's so interesting because as you were speaking, I'm thinking of so many situations or relationships, whether it's family relationships or friendships, or even forgiving yourself for past romantic relationships, or relationships with people on the street that you may have had past ties with, and people in the community. There's so many different layers because this is really about relationship, about that relationship with yourself and others. So having those opportunities to forgive and restore, there's so many different opportunities there.
Yes. And I think one of the ones that came front and center to mind for me very recently, I guess at the end of last year, was the whole situation with Will Smith and the original Aunt Viv, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
watching
The
how
original Aunt Viv.
the
Yes.
original Aunt Viv, right? And Janet Huber is her name, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
watching how for 30 years this woman was carrying this, right? And there was this bitterness, there was this holding back, and at some point during the reunion, I won't spoil the whole thing for those who haven't seen it yet, but anyways, at some point, she says that you did this to me, right?
Yes.
And that you were a 20-year-old, you know, whatever, however, and you did this to me. I'm thinking, imagine giving a 20-year-old who's trying to figure himself out that much power
Yes.
as a grown woman, that
Right.
for 30 years your life could
Right.
not move forward.
Right.
You know,
Feeling so
that's
stuck and
huge.
stuck. It
That's
is huge. It
huge.
is huge.
And then
It,
they came together and had this moment of forgiveness, and you could see the change in her as they were talking, right? And
right.
it's
You can
huge.
kind of see the hurt starting to dissipate and melt away. Right. Um, you hit the nail on the head right there about giving someone else the power. And I think that's exactly it. I mean, in my line of work, and especially with working with keepsakes, you recognize how there's struggles for power and control within so many different dynamics, whether it's from gang life or street life or family life and or romantic relationships, all this different stuff, right? So it's like, how much power were you actually given? I think people have a misconception of power and control.
Yes.
There's such a misconception of power and control. A misconception to the point that a lot of people are living thinking that they are empowered and have power and control, but it's actually the opposite. It's like we're holding on to things really, really tight, thinking that this is power, this is control, as opposed to trying to figure out all the hurt and pain that's going on the inside, right? And you
Mhm.
know, there's a lot of different people. For those of you who have been following Keep Six, you have seen our empowerment to unlock the justice system, where people have spoken about their stories, about the hardships that they have gone through in their family and their life, and their search for power and control in gang life and in street life, and how that had led to people going through different situations. But it's so much understanding, like, that gives a lot of power to those other people who have done the
Mhm.
hurt, who have
Mhm.
done the hurting.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting you said that they think they have power, but they really don't. And for me, it's that notion of it's actually a self-limiting concept, right?
Mm,
Because and that's something we explore too during the workshop is if you forgive, what do you have to give up? Like, what do you have to stop saying about yourself? What do you have to, because for some people, it might be that victim
yeah.
narrative that they feel in some, backwards way empowered by because that's what gives them attention. That's what gives them this. And, for other people, it's exactly, with violence saying that, well, I'm in control now. I have power because I'm going to go hurt this, that, and the other person, but you're
Yes.
creating this very limiting sphere for yourself of how you can
Yes.
exist and how you can interact with others and what your life could look like. Because in
Right.
both of those scenarios, you can't do much more than what is defined by the title that you've given to yourself, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very self-limiting.
Hmm.
It's a false sense of power, of course.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
why forgiveness, we also stress that it's not for the faint of heart. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not
Yes.
easy. It takes courage and it takes grit. Like you have to
Hmm.
be willing to keep at it, right? And once
Right.
you do that, sometimes you will feel a weight that's lifted off of you. You will
Yes.
feel that you've dropped some things. And
Hmm.
in that moment, you could feel very naked and vulnerable because you've been so used to wearing that armor or wearing
Yes.
that weight or wearing that
Yes.
title. So
Hmm.
then you have this moment of, well, who am I if I'm not
Right. Without
that
that.
person?
Hmm.
Exactly. And so
Hmm.
that's also something that, someone asked if you can have a restoring relationship with yourself. Well, that's one of those cases where you're going to be building a new truth with yourself, recognizing that what you were carrying before is not who you actually are and is not who you have to
Anymore.
be. And so what
Yeah.
do you do, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's huge, yeah.
It is huge, because then what you speak of is really creating a new identity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not creating an identity based on I am hurt, or I was shamed, or I did this or I did that, but really, like, now that I'm getting to this place of restoring, of healing, of understanding, of letting go of some of this armor of shame and hurt, who am I now?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a lot of
Exactly.
self-discovery there.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
what
no,
can I
that's
do and how far can I go, right? So,
yeah, yes,
mhm.
yes, yes. Right, someone's saying family is the hardest. Unfortunately, a lot of times that is true. It's really hard to um, to forgive family and restore with some
Mhm.
family, right? It's
Mhm.
possible, 100% it's possible. Not saying that it's going to be any easier, but I mean, if you have the want to do that, then do it. It's
Mhm.
possible,
Mhm.
right? And if
Mhm.
anything, do it for yourself. Do
Yeah.
it for yourself.
I think a huge thing, I had seen that comment too, and I wanted to come
Yeah.
back to it as well,
Yeah.
is the expectation that we have with family, right? There's a
Yes.
verse my mom always quotes, says, if it had been a stranger, it wouldn't have hurt, but because it was
Yes.
a brother, right? Because there's an
Yeah.
expectation, there's
Yes.
a knowing, there's an
Yep.
intimacy there that
Yep.
when those lines get crossed, suddenly of
Hmm.
course, it hurts more,
Hurts more.
even if
Hmm.
it's the same thing that another person would have done to you, right?
Yes.
And
Very true.
so that's part of that work of then understanding the realities and what drove the other person. And I think in situations where you're dealing with youth who are stuck in a cycle of violence, a lot of times their family did something to them, but that's what their family knew, right? We hear
Yes.
all the time that a parent can't give what they never had,
Yep.
they can't do what they didn't know. And
Yep.
it's very easy to say, well, they could have learned or they could have changed, but that impact, as you talk
Hmm.
about often, of that generational trauma, that weight that gets
Yes.
brought down from one to the other, when you stop and really start thinking about how that impacted or came into play or affected whatever occurred, again, it doesn't
Yeah.
excuse it, and it doesn't mean that it was okay, but just having that deeper level of understanding can make it easier for you to come to terms with and make a decision then to
Yeah.
change, right? So,
Exactly, exactly. Someone else is saying here too, always acting on the subconscious mind, despite the fact that we know it to be wrong.
mhm,
Um, and I think it's interesting, especially the subconscious and wrong, right? It's subconscious in our mind. Maybe it has been that family dynamic that we have repeated over and over and over. And we may not know it's wrong. We may not have been told it's wrong, but we feel like a way
mhm,
about it or off about it, right? So, I mean, um, a lot of this too is really breaking those generational traumas and those generational stuff that has been recurring,
mhm,
right? Because sometimes what happens is like you don't know the why behind it, but it's
yeah.
something that gets recycled throughout the family.
Exactly. And I think that's really important because when you actually stop and acknowledge, then that's when you could change. Because we'll often hear people say, well, I'm never going to be like my dad, or I'm never going to be like my
Mm-hmm.
mom. But they don't
Mm-hmm.
understand their story or what led to that. So then they find themselves in a very similar
Same
situation.
situation.
And then
Yes.
they repeat it and they're surprised. Well, it's because there was never that knowledge, that knowing, that acknowledgement to then break that habit or that cycle so that you could
Yeah.
actually change, right? We try to change
Yes.
ourselves by force or by
Mm-hmm.
distance or by whatever. But unless you
Mm-hmm.
actually understand and know, then it
Yes.
becomes nearly impossible to change. And then I would throw in there forgive, because again, you're
Mm-hmm.
letting go of that impact, that, kind of download of what you received from them. You're letting it go and you're saying, I understand now what happened, and I'm going to make that choice to change course. So,
Right, right. No, this is amazing. This is a great conversation. I know Jesse Blog is asking, will this conversation be available after? Yes, we will be uploading this conversation, as with our other conversations, on the Keep Six IGTV. Excuse me, TV, as well as it will be uploaded on the Keep Six YouTube channel. So, Jesse, you will be able to find it there shortly after 8 o'clock. It should be up there and uploaded on the IGTV. All right. Um, yes, thank you, Rachel. Rachel has answered that as well. So I know we have about like 7 minutes left. I just want to pivot a little bit. Because I know that, Jackie, you were saying on top of volunteering with FFC, you're also doing some other stuff. You want to tell us about it?
yeah, so I volunteer with community mediation groups, and that's essentially organizations that offer mediations free of service in communities to deal with like neighborhood disputes or minor family disputes or small business situations, and to just give people opportunities to have access to an alternative means to resolve their issues. And so that's one of the things that I do. There's FFC, and I mentioned CICR before, which gives training to people who are interested in becoming third-party neutrals or learning more about alternative dispute resolution.
Okay. For the mediation that you spoke of, you said that especially like community based. So is this a free program?
It is, and most major cities have their own version of community mediation. Some
Right.
of them are in tandem with, maybe a university or
Okay.
a YMCA or whatnot. But,
Yeah.
so it's really about you kind of look up community mediation and whatever is
Nice.
available in your area should come up.
Mm-hmm.
And it is free, it is volunteer based. It's usually
Mm-hmm.
a co-mediation model. So you have two people who were
Yep.
trained who will deliver it. And again, it typically is for minor issues. Like a lot of the things that we see is, around, well, in the winter, it's the snow. In the summer, it's the tree trimming. It's the garbage. It's the
Yes.
dog. Petty. But for a lot of people, they've been having this issue with their neighbor for years. Like I've seen
Yes.
cases where they've been at each other's throats for 10, 15 years. Can you imagine not being able to live in peace in your own home for that long, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's a really important service, because a lot of times the police are like, well, if nothing criminal has happened, there's nothing we can do. And the city is like, well,
Right.
we showed up and it was quiet when we came, so there's nothing we can do. And, you know, people just get frustrated. It's like, well, have you tried talking to each other? Not yelling at each other, but actually
Right.
talking to each other, right? So
Yeah.
that's where a mediator could kind of come in and created a space, an environment, an opportunity
Yeah.
for people to have a different kind of conversation and to be
Yeah.
supported in having a different kind of
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah. I like that because it's interesting how you said that people are asking, have you sat down? Have you spoken with each other, not yelling to each other? But I think the reality is for a lot of us, we're not taught how to communicate,
No,
right?
no,
We're taught how to talk and we're
yes,
taught how to like scream and yell and shout and do all of that.
yeah,
We're not taught how to communicate, how to effectively and healthily
yeah,
communicate,
yeah, exactly. We're
right?
taught to talk and react, but we're
Mm-hmm.
not taught to listen. That's a huge part of communication. And people, when they hear the word communication, they hear talking, as you said,
Yeah.
or writing or whatever, but they don't
Yeah.
recognize how important listening is in communication. And they
Mm-hmm.
also don't realize how much of our communication is nonverbal. So there's the
Yeah.
words I say, but there's the tone, there's my
Yeah.
body language, or all of these other things that will trigger or set someone off. And they're responding to your eye
Yes.
roll, not the word you said,
Yes.
right? You know?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, you know, being able to make people aware of that and help them
Mm-hmm.
recognize that if you want to be heard, first you have to listen,
Yeah.
and second, you
Mm-hmm.
have to deliver it in a way that's going to land well with the other person, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that those are really, really important points. Definitely important
Mhm.
points. Does anyone else have any, as we're wrapping up here, does anyone else have any questions, any comments? This has been a great conversation. Someone here is saying interpersonal skills are so important, right? Like 100%. They are so important. And I don't think they're taught enough, right? We don't have
Um,
courses in school that teaches it, and a lot of us come from families where it's not talked about, feelings are not talked about, effective communication skills are not spoken of. So
mhm.
yes, they are very, very important skills. um, yeah, so I think I've gone through, I think I was able to get through all the comments. Thank you, everyone. This has been a great, great conversation. I know that we had a lot of engagement, a lot of comments and questions and things so that people are asking about where to get it. Definitely, this will be up on the IGTV shortly after we finish. It's also going to be up on the Keep Six YouTube channel. So definitely go and subscribe, like, share. Also, Keep Six has Gangs for Tuition. It's a new program that's rolling out in February, so just in a few short weeks. And we are going to be also partnering with Forgiveness for Restoration Canada, among other programs. So you can definitely let people know that these programs are there, that Keep Six is partnering with some great programs in the community. Jackie, let us know where we can reach out to get more information about FFC, as well as if people
Mhm.
want to reach out to you.
So for FFC, the best place to get information is at forgivingforrestoring.ca. And that will really outline kind of what the program is about, where it started, and when we'll be offering workshops that people could sign up for. Also, in order to get in touch with me, you can email me, and the email address is fiveninemediation@outlook.com. And you can email me to find out more about that. But also, if you want to explore a situation where you think you might need mediation or conflict coaching or whatever the case may be, we can definitely have a conversation around that. And or you can call as well, the 613-265-3478. So you have the choice for both of those.
Right, definitely. And I will be putting all that information up connected to this live. So you have the information there. So if you want to like and share with individuals, definitely all the information will be there. Yeah, if there is someone saying, thanks, Jacqueline, for sharing your perspective. Whoops.
And I'll
Well,
actually
that just
acknowledge that that is John, one of our FFC members. So thank you, John, for
nice.
coming out. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And as you see, right, we have different facilitators. So we have Jacqueline, we have John, we have other individuals who will be also, who are facilitators and who also be involved partnering with Keep Six for when our big program rolls out in just a few short weeks. So Jackie, thank you so much for being on our platform today. This has been a great conversation. I had other questions, but I love that we had this free-flowing, dynamic conversation. We had a lot of great engagement. People are very interested in forgiveness and restoration, so this has been a great conversation.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. And I want to give a shout out to all the people who came to support me. I saw them, Tanya, Jesse, and my sister Carla. I appreciate it very much, and whoever else was out there. And it was a great opportunity to just bring some clarity, some understanding to the community so that people can heal and people can move forward in their lives. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So thank you, everyone. Jackie, I'm trying to, okay, I don't think you're going to go. But anyways, thank you, everyone, for joining. This has been another great episode of Keep Six, Connect the Six. We will be back next week, same time, same place, Wednesday at 7 p.m. I think Rachel's going to be hosting next week, so we will see you soon. Have a great week, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.